solicit residents at nursing homes and assisted living facilities. Would this early voting have any impact on them? I'm assuming not, because they still vote within their where they are living, and they still would need to request an absentee ballot. Would that be the same? There would be, technically, the early voting wouldn't qualify really for someone in a nursing home. If they can't leave, they would have to do the same process of an absentee ballot. Is that correct?
Yes, that's accurate. They would qualify under the current absentee ballot regime where either because of physical disability or illness, or perhaps another consideration, they won't be able to be at the polls on election day. And as a result, they would qualify for an absentee ballot, and they would still seek an apply for an absentee ballot the same way that they do currently.
Okay, thank you. And right now with an absentee ballot, you can vote by absentee ballot, but there's a time frame that you can actually retrieve that ballot. And I'm wondering, with the early voting ballot, is one able to retrieve that if they went 2 weeks before or 10 days before, and now on election day they want to retrieve that? I've changed my mind. Something came out in the news that's changed my mind when I change my vote. Are they able to do that?
So that's a good question. We actually considered that specifically, and it's a question that I asked during some of our meetings. So the short answer is no, that would not apply to early voting. And the reason why it doesn't in this bill is that process for absentee ballots is primarily meant as a ballot curing measure. It's not meant to allow you to change your vote because you learned something new. Now, that being said, there's a possibility that you could use it for that purpose, but it's not the main purpose of the absentee ballot modification regime. And as a result, we thought that it was essentially an undue burden on the elections officials to have to accommodate that for early voting as well, when the reasons why you would be curing a ballot are much smaller in an early vote situation, because the vast majority of problems with absentee ballots are that inner envelope signature or some element of that.
Okay, thank you. And this one is still going to have, this early voting ballot will still have an inner envelope, correct?
That's correct, but there will be no outer envelope. So when they actually sign it, they will be in front of an elections official, and the elections official will be able to look at it and say, oh, you didn't do this correctly, fix it now. As opposed to when you mail it in and it's inside the outer envelope, no one figures out that you somehow didn't adequately sign it or what have you until the votes are ready to be counted. And at that point, it's too late.
So their name is on it on the outer envelope. So that's where they're checking it off. And on this procedure, there's none. Is that, did I get that right? There's not two envelopes.
Correct. There would just be one envelope.
So they can't retrieve it because they're currently right there. Okay. The other question I have really, and obviously a concern, is the number of days. I think is long, 10, 14 days is long. The cost. I didn't see anything in here or any conversation about what this could possibly cost the towns. Do we have, I know this will go to appropriations, but has there been any research done, or do we have any data at all of an estimate of what this possibly could cost?
So that's a good question. And getting that fiscal note is one of the reasons why we wanted to JF these bills relatively early on in the process, so that we can get an idea for those costs and accommodate them. That being said, there is an awareness that the state will have to provide resources, especially this year, because towns are already passing their budgets for the year now. And this bill, it is not clear yet what it will cost to the state. So how can they know as towns and budget for it? So there's an understanding that we're going to have to provide resources as the state to help them accomplish these goals.
Thank you. Yeah, and it is a concern. Like they said, they have a hard time finding people just on election day. And the cost to the towns would be possibly overtime for their staff. That overtime goes into pensions. It's a lot of union negotiations. There's a lot going on that the towns really have to bear in the costs. So that is obviously a concern of mine. I'm certain once I get home and read more of this, we didn't have a lot of time to read through it. I'm going to have more questions. I'll certainly reach out to you. But really my concern today really is obviously there's some tweaks and things in here. I'm not sure of the cost. And I do believe that the number of days is extensive. But that's just my opinion, but I don't have any further questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. And is there further comment? I think I'll So we have some comment on the Democratic side, which I'll allow first before Senator Sampson offers his amendments. Representative Morinbello.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm grateful for the voters for their support of the constitutional amendment for early voting, because I am a proponent of doing anything we can to increase access. I was an assistant town clerk in the town of Wethersfield for 10 years. That was 10 years ago, so processes have changed, but I did want to alleviate some of the fears about the custody of ballots. When we had absentee ballots, if there were a small number, we locked them in our safe. So that was never accessible to residents or title searchers, attorneys, all of that. Our vault was always open when our building was open and our office was open. When there were larger amounts of absentee ballots, they would be boxed and they would be in the vault. And then when the vault was opened in the morning, they would be brought behind the counter in the town clerk's office. So they were removed. They were removed from the vault so that the public wouldn't have access to them, and they were kept safe behind the counter where the town clerk and the assistant clerks were. And then at the end of the night, they were put back in that vault and locked up for the evening, so that there wasn't a concern with people having access to them. So I just wanted to try to alleviate some of the fears about the chain of custody of the absentee ballots, and moving forward our early voting ballots. I also look at this early voting initiative as an evolution to voting. Senator Sampson, you mentioned you can remember the first time you went to vote, and the first 4 times I voted, I actually voted by absentee ballot because I was a college student. I was out of state and couldn't vote. But I remember the first time I voted in person, and it was the turquoise machine. It had the curtain, you pulled the lever, and then you could pull a party lever, or you could pull all the little levers. And I remember, to my father's disappointment when they got rid of that party lever. So through the years, we've evolved. Now everything is computerized, and I can remember when that transformation took place and how much concern there was about the safety of the voting process, moving from these big, mechanical machines to the digital world and the computer world. So I see all of this as an evolution of that process. And also some states have 30 and 40-day early voting, and I think that is way too much time. And I'm glad to see that we're not considering anything that extensive, because I think there are difficulties involved when the process is that long. I personally think it's very important that we have 2 weekends where we allow people the opportunity to vote. And I think it's important we make sure there are either morning or evening hours as well. So I feel very comfortable with a 10 to 14 days that includes those 2 weekends. So people are able to, to get out to vote when they want to and when they need to. And I also see the benefit that the early voting, you don't have the paperwork to fill out. You're not filling out a form when you get into town hall, and you don't have the 2 envelopes because, again, when I worked in the town clerk's office, there were problems. People forgot to sign those inner envelopes, or they took their ballot and they put it in the outer envelope and forgot to put it in the inner envelope. And all of these issues led to ballots that weren't counted. So if early voting can help alleviate some of that, that's also wonderful in my mind, that we get rid of some of the ways people made errors that made their votes not count. So I thank you for bringing this forward, Chair, and I look forward to supporting it here and on the House floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair. And I suppose I should have referred that question to you with your extensive experience, but we appreciate you educating the committee and contributing your remarks. Representative Carpino, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a comment, if I may. As someone who supports in-person early voting, I have to tell you that I was disappointed by the agenda. It reads a bit like a choose your own adventure book. I'll be honest. Our goal is to give greater access and transparency to government in this committee, and yet the agenda that's posted late the day before has 3 separate bills with very similar language, none of which were shorter than 30 pages. And I think it's really detrimental and disingenuous to the voters. How are they to know which bill to follow, which bill to put their efforts in, which ones they should comment on? And I just think it is really unfair. This building would grind to a halt if every complex and important issue that our committees raised issued or sent out 3 different versions. And again, only to the detriment of the people we represent. So I thought it was an important comment to make. I think at this point, it's not a new issue that one version of this bill should be before us today. I don't love any of them and hope that all of them are a work in progress, but it is so disingenuous and I truly believe confusing to voters that I hope that the committee will not be doing this with additional bills. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Representative Carpino. And I would just respond by saying that the committee has included 3 different bills for several reasons, but one of them is a testament to the importance with which we view this issue in ensuring that we have a vehicle in each house of the legislature that will be able to be proceeded upon, and also to give the voters options, especially during the public hearing process. That being said, I understand your concerns and your critiques, and we hear them. Is there further comment on the bill before us? Seeing none. Senator Sampson is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As promised, I have a number of amendments that I'd like to offer on Senate Bill 1057. As we talked about in the start of the conversation about early voting, that the bills are similar. The 3 early voting bills, the 2 Senate bills 1057 and 1064, and House Bill 5004. The only distinction being the time frame in 1057 being 10 days of early voting, the other 2 bills being 14 days, and the inclusion of referendum questions being included in the Senate Bill 1064 and House Bill 5004, but not included in Senate Bill 1057. I could have easily made these amendments on any of the 3 bills, but since I focused my remarks on Senate Bill 1057, I'm going to offer them on this particular bill, although just to follow up on the conversation that the chair just had with Representative Carpino, I'm certainly sympathetic to that, and I agree. It's unusual to have multiple bills with different policy solutions to the same subject matter. We certainly do have multiple bills that discuss different topics, but this is a pretty cut and dry situation of very, very similar bills with multiple different avenues being presented. Certainly during the public hearing process, I think that was a valuable tool to ascertain what the public thinks about the time frame that is being proposed and weigh in on what they think is a more prudent time frame. I'm disappointed that a time frame that I would have approved of was not among those proposals. And it still is not represented among these bills. Maybe we have a chance to fix that right now by amending one of these bills to a time frame that I see as an attempt to approach this subject in the most comprehensive but also bipartisan manner that is possible. I can tell you that I'm personally not going to vote for any of the 3 bills on the agenda unless some of these amendments are adopted. But I don't say that in a way to be a nudge, as my grandmother would say. I do that as in my desire to make our final product something that is a policy decision made by the entire GAE committee and hopefully the entire legislature, and not just the majority party, regardless of what the minority party thinks. And I hope it will be taken in that frame. So without further ado, the first amendment that I'm going to offer, and I can pass these down, although I understand the clerk is going to share them by email also. these do not, oh, they do have an, there's no LCO or anything for this language, but this amendment would effectively change the time frame on this bill from a 10-day period for early voting to 3 days within a period of 5 days, ultimately allowing the choice of Friday, Monday, Tuesday, or Saturday, Monday, Tuesday, or Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I don't know if I need to pass these out to the members of the committee. If there's anyone who wants a hard copy, I can. One thing I would say about this amendment, which I will go into, I'll explain it a little more thoroughly and I'll move its adoption and so forth. But just in my argument for the amendment is simply that it will certainly help its passage. I would be very inclined to support this legislation going forward as part of the team putting together our early voting law for Connecticut. If it were to be adopted, it will significantly shorten debate going forward in the Senate. I can promise you that. I think it has a lot of other benefits other than, Sampson is for it. I think there's other things that should be taken into consideration. We've talked about the cost factor. I know that it's been presented that we're going to start with a 10 or 14 day period. We're going to try and do it this year in the municipal election to get the kinks out so that we can work forward. I firmly believe that we are far better off offering a shorter time frame to start with, not to put so much burden on the municipal officials that are going to be responsible for carrying out this activity. I would much rather see them have a workable time frame. The constitutional amendment has already been adopted, and now it's just a matter of legislation being passed to change this going forward to make alterations in how the policy works. If it's determined that it goes smoothly 3 and 5 days and there is a benefit that members of the legislature see in expanding that time frame, they have the ability to do so with a simple majority. It's a much lower hurdle, and I don't think it's an unreasonable ask from that perspective. So without further ado, the amendment, I don't know if I would need to read the whole thing, but I will, since it's one paragraph. It says section 1 new. This would be effective July 1st, 2023. Any eligible elector may vote prior to the date of regular election or primary in accordance with the provisions of this section during a period of early voting at each such regular election held on or after July 1st, 2023, and at each primary held on or after January 1st, 2024, the same as the underlying bill. Such period of early voting shall, A, notwithstanding the provisions of section 9-2 of the general statutes, commence on the 6th day prior to and conclude on the 2nd day prior to such regular election or primary, and consist of 3 total days to be determined by the Secretary of State, such times as provided in subsection C of section 9-174 of the general statutes as amended by this act. And I move adoption, and I'd like a roll call vote. Thank you.
Need a second on that?
Second.
Okay, the amendment is moved by Senator Sampson and seconded by Representative Massafrancesco. Is there any comment on the amendment? Representative Massafrancesco.
Just really quickly, Mr. Chairman, I think this really is a good amendment. I think it's going to ease the burden very much so on the towns. And I certainly agree. And I have said this from day one. I like starting off small and then growing from there. I think sometimes when you leap, you put the cart before the horse, and when you make mistakes and things we have to tweak, it's a bigger task because we've taken too much of a step. So I certainly support this amendment, and I hope my colleagues will certainly consider it. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Is there further comment on this amendment? Seeing no further comment from the committee, I would just say I appreciate the spirit in which the amendment is intended. However, I disagree with it. I think we have a different philosophy about the right way to approach this early voting issue for the first time, which is, I think in our mind, and I think the Secretary of the State put it quite well, that we should start more expansively. And if we find that that expansive period is not justified, then we can reduce it. because we will never actually know if we start small, what additional participation we're missing out on. And so I think that's the philosophy that guides our approach to this specific provision. And also I would note that we're far from on the bleeding edge of longest early voting periods, even if we adopt this language. In fact, we would be right close to the middle of the pack, a little below the median. So with that, I urge my colleagues to reject this amendment. Is there any further comment? With that, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Amendment 1 by Senator Sampson. Flexer,
Senator Flexer votes no.
Blumenthal,
Blumenthal votes no.
Slapp,
Senator Slapp votes no.
Morinbello,
Bello votes no.
Sampson,
Sampson is yes.
Master Francesco,
Master Francesco votes yes.
Burger Gervalo,
Burger Gervalo votes no.
Bronco,
Bronco votes yes.
Carpino,
Carpino votes yes.
Haddad,
Haddad votes no.
Hoxa,
Hoxa votes yes.
Khanna,
Khanna votes no.
Labriola,
Representative Labriola votes yes.
Marks,
Senator Marks votes no.
McCarthy Vehi,
Representative McCarthy Vehi votes no.
McCrory, Parker, Rosario,
Representative Rosario votes no.
Santiago,
Santiago votes no.
Give another minute for any representatives or senators who are not present to appear. Madam Clerk, would you please announce the vote?
6 yea, 11 nay, 2 absent.
The amendment is rejected. Representative Master Francesco, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not surprised that our amendment didn't pass. But there are some really good things that we can do here to work together. And one thing that I've always advocated for is, protecting the integrity of our elections, to make sure the proper person is voting and really following what other states do. I can tell you in other states, they have early voting. A lot of them do have maybe no excuse absentee voting, but they have security measures in place. And I often hear people saying Connecticut, we have the toughest voting laws. Well, maybe we have the toughest when it comes to maybe having ballot access, but when it comes to voting, we have very loose laws here in Connecticut. We really don't have any protections. So I would like to offer an amendment to certainly help the confidence, bring back the confidence in the voters. And this is not only for early voting, but this is also for voting in general, that we really should be requiring a photo ID. So, Mr. Chairman, what this amendment does, it asks that when people go to vote in person, they need to have a photo identification. Now, I realize we've had this debate on the floor many, many times. And the topic always comes up that, well, it disenfranchises voters. What if they can't afford to get an ID? Certainly, we are sympathetic to that. But what this amendment also does is it includes for the state of Connecticut to pay for people's photo ID for voting. We've spent a lot of money in the legislature on a lot of frivolous things, and there is a lot of wasteful spending. There's no reason why the state of Connecticut cannot supply the voters of the state with a photo ID. So, Mr. What'd you say? With a photo ID. So, Mr. Chairman, the amendment is for a photo ID, and the state of Connecticut would certainly provide that for us. I move adoption on this amendment and ask for a roll call. Thank you.
The amendment is moved by Representative Massafrancesco, seconded by Senator Sampson. When the vote is taken, it will be taken by roll. Are there any other remarks or comment on the amendment? Senator Sampson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just want to comment briefly on this amendment also. I couldn't agree more with my fellow ranking member. If there's one thing that I think that we could do that's relatively simple and easy to employ in our election policy in the state of Connecticut that would restore confidence in many, many people who have a lack of confidence in the integrity of our elections in Connecticut, this is definitely it. As she mentioned, people often say that Connecticut has some of the tightest elections that there are, and they're almost always exclusively talking about the access to the election process, because up until recently, we did not have no excuse absentee voting. I know I say that tongue in cheek, and we're now discussing early voting. But the fact of the matter is, when it comes to our security-based policy, when it comes to elections, we are lagging way behind the rest of the country. It was extremely eye-opening. I mentioned earlier today that we had a brief discussion with the Secretary of State from the state of Georgia, who has all of these policies. They have no excuse absentee voting, and they have early voting. I don't know the period of time, but they have pretty much everything that is being discussed and proposed in Connecticut, but they have also simultaneously really employed as much security in their process as possible. They require photo ID for every voter, and that means not just in-person voting. They have photo ID for absentee voting, and they also have other mechanisms to identify the signer of a document when the ballot application is produced, and they're way ahead of us in making sure that the security and integrity of elections are maintained. And as I mentioned early on, to me, these issues are nothing more than items that ought to be approached in a bipartisan nature, because these are the rules of the game. This is not something that we're debating about social policy. This is, can we please agree on how we're going to do elections so that we afford opportunity and also make people on the street confident that what we're doing means a legitimate result? And to me, photo ID is something that I'm extremely passionate about. If you talk to voters, it is overwhelmingly popular. I have seen polls on photo ID as high as 90% of voters. I've also seen the man on the street interview with people from inner city neighborhoods, the same people that are always used as the reason for why this is a terrible and racist policy that suppresses the vote. It's not. They don't think so. They recognize that obtaining an ID is not such a chore and such a difficult thing to achieve. The fact of the matter is, if I went through a list of all the things that you need to have a driver's license for to pursue in the world we live in, it would shock you. Everything from getting on an airplane to cashing a check to buying liquor. I mean, you could like go through a laundry list of items that you need photo ID for. And yet the state of Connecticut does not require photo ID for voting. it boggles the mind. This will be, I don't know how many times I've offered this amendment in this committee and on the floor of both the House and Senate. I have the privilege of doing both, and it has failed every time on a party line vote. And I'm going to do it again today with another try. Please consider the fact that photo ID is not just something that will actually benefit the quality and integrity of our elections. It will go a long way to letting me and my colleagues in the minority believe that we're in this together to make this policy for early voting something that the legislature believes in. After all, we all represent the same number of people back home, and each one of us is here representing them and their voice. And it's very frustrating when something as what I consider to be a pretty minor ask on a major, major policy decision that the state of Connecticut is making to implement early voting, that we keep in mind that photo ID is something that the minority sees as critically important, and so do a majority of your own constituents. So I'm proud to second this motion for that amendment, and I hope that folks across the spectrum see the value in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Is there further comment on the amendment? Representative Hossa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you, I just want to, second or third, the senator's comments for the bill originated, or I'm sorry, for the amendment originated by my colleague, Representative Mastro Francesco. Yeah, I mean, I just, I agree with everything that, surprise, surprise, I agree with everything my Republican colleagues just said. It's really just a relatively small expenditure that it would ultimately result in on behalf of whichever agency, Department of Motor Vehicles or whatever would be responsible for providing essentially free identification to people that can't afford it. But it's truly a very small ask to alleviate a very big concern. And there's everyone in this room knows how our caucus feels, and and our position on this issue. We've been fighting for it for a very long time in various arenas and venues. So I just urge my colleagues on on the other side to consider this as well. And that's all I have on this one, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Rosario, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question for the proponent of the amendment, if I may.
Madam Representative, prepare yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Mastro Francesco, I'm the subcommittee chair on transportation and appropriations, overseeing the DMV. You're saying that there's a $28 fee for the application. Where would that money come from?
I never put a price tag on it. I did not say $28.
Sorry, if not to interrupt, but if we could just
Except,
ask and answer through the chair, please.
Oh.
So through me to you,
thank
Madam
you.
Ranking Member.
So, yeah. So I never talked about a $28 fee. It's just the actual amendment says the commissioner shall waive the fee for any applicant who does not have the means to pay such fee. Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Rosario.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. And about how many people you would, let's say in the city of Bridgeport, assuming, let's say, 7,000 people go out and vote, and just roughly, let's say 4,000 people won't be able to afford that fee or that $28. Is there a price tag as to how much the city, the state of Connecticut would be waiving for voter ID cards?
Representative Mastro Francesco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you. Obviously, this would have to go to appropriations. I certainly believe that this is a good investment for the state of Connecticut. We had this conversation, I believe, last year when I brought up the amendment for photo ID, and the complaint was always, what's the cost going to be? But if you look at really how much money the state of Connecticut spends on frivolous things. I mean, if you just look at the bills that we have this year that want to pay for services for people out of state and they're not citizens, I mean, it costs a lot of money. This is a very small gesture that I think the state of Connecticut can do to help preserve the integrity of our elections and give the residents more confidence. Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Representative. Representative Rosario, did you have further questions?
No, I just, in closing, I just think even if in the event we were gonna waive that fee, I think that would have a pretty big price tag. I won't be supporting this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Senator Slapp, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I would just urge my colleagues to vote against this amendment. The examples that were given in terms of where you need a photo ID or driver's license, like a grocery store, or to buy purchase alcohol or get on a plane, those are not rights. And this is very different. We are almost definitely, if we pass this amendment and then adopted the amendment, passed into law, denying people the right to vote. I don't know how anybody would debate otherwise. And we're doing that. Why? Because we see waves of people fraudulently going to the polls and committing felonies by saying that, they're somebody else, or bringing a different telephone bill to the poll. I mean, I just don't see it. And, we should not confuse things like buying alcohol with the right to vote, the fundamental part of being in this country and, being a citizen of this country. Finally, I would just add that if we want to restore people's integrity or people's, faith in the system, to the extent that some don't believe in it, every single one of us could go around right now and denounce the big lie and say that, that election, the last one, wasn't stolen, it's a lie. And that would go a long way, because, there are folks who have given that lie a lot of airtime. I'm not saying anybody on this committee or anything, but I'm just saying in the public. And that has a snowball effect. And letting lies like that go unchecked, that can erode integrity, or perceived integrity, I should say, in the voting system. That's done more than anything to damage people's confidence, not this red herring of an issue. So I would urge my colleagues to vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Marks. And I would just ask that everyone keep their remarks to the amendment as closely as they can. Senator Marks.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Representative who put up this amendment. I'm just curious if we have residents who are in scooter chairs or who are non-ambulatory and they have a hard time getting to their doctor's office. Can you give me an example of how we're going to get them to get a photo ID?
Representative Mastrofrancesco, are you prepared?
I am well prepared, Representative, Mr. Chairman. So your question was, if I understand you correctly, is how somebody with maybe special needs that are handicapped, that has a hard time getting to the doctor, going to get this identification. Is that correct question through you, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, through you. Oh, sorry.
Senator Marks.
Sorry, Chair, through you. Yes, if you're a person, elderly, special needs, somebody that has a difficult time ambulating and transportation is very difficult, where are they to get this ID?
So through you, Mr. Chairman. So there's a number of ways that you can actually get an identification to a person. Many people already have a photo ID, whether it's a driver's license or some other form of state ID. That certainly they can get a copy made. We have a great technology today with people on computers, cell phones that they can take a picture of. Now, I know your response is going to be, well, what if they don't have a computer? And what if they don't have a cell phone? Certainly there's avenues that we can put together to make sure that we have a photo ID, a photo taken of that person to get the ID, and how that we would, once that has happened, once we take that photo, how we get that photo ID to them. They certainly wouldn't have to pick it up. It can be delivered to them via mail or digitally, through you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Marks?
Okay, I don't think it really got answered, but that's okay. I will not be voting for this bill, and I thank you, Chair, for allowing me a question.
Thank you, Senator Marks. Senator Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to address the concerns that have been mentioned. The first thing I would suggest is that this amendment, while it would require everyone to have a photo identification to cast a ballot, the part that seems to be concerning the members of the minority is the cost associated with providing these IDs to a very limited number of people in this state. I don't know anyone personally that does not have an ID, and that includes people that are have disabilities and do not drive. The fact of the matter is that to actively participate in American society in 2023, you've got to have a photo ID. There are very, very few people who don't. So forgive me for suggesting through you, Mr. Chairman, that is a very disingenuous argument, especially when this legislature has been spending billions of dollars each year to grow our government programs and assistance. When I was first elected, there were less than 200,000 people on Medicaid. Now it is 1 million people in our state. I mean, that's a third of the state population receives Medicaid benefits. I don't know how much a photo ID is going to actually cost to produce and deliver to someone via the mail or to be picked up in person. I mean, it's a negligible cost. And we're associating this cost only with people that cannot afford to purchase one on their own. The number of people this is going to apply to probably amounts to in the, sub 5,000 number for the entire state of Connecticut. We're talking about a tremendously small appropriation. There's our bills in this legislature to spend $2 million to invite people to have abortions from out of state in Connecticut. We're talking about Medicaid for illegal aliens. To have a conversation and to have a policy decision like this being put in question over a tremendously small number of people and a tremendously small amount of money that it would cost to provide them with the access necessary, to me is just absurd. And I would add to that, just because it is a right does not necessarily mean that other people's rights cannot be affected by someone's failure to be able to provide their identity. The purpose of this legislation is to protect the validity and integrity of the entire vote, which means to protect the rights of every person voting, not just the person in question who's being required to have a photo ID. The fact of the matter is there is a huge population of people in the state who want more protections so that they can be confident that the election is accurate and only legitimate voters participated. And this is a mechanism to get there to protect their right. I'd also add that there are many rights that people have in this country that we do charge them fees for. And I might agree with the good senator on the subject that we shouldn't be, like gun permits, for example. The right to possess and firearms is in our state and U.S. Constitution, and yet the state of Connecticut feels it's necessary to charge someone for a permit to do so. So unless we're going to repeal that, I don't think it's appropriate to be putting into question the small amount of fee associated with providing other people with these IDs. I was going to address the issue with the big lie. I just want to point out that no one on this committee has ever made representations about the 2020 presidential election being in doubt or in question. Not a single time. In fact, myself, and I don't want to speak for anyone else on this regard, but I have taken a lot of heat from Republicans across this state and in fact, across the country, because I have done my due diligence to make sure that when I discuss voter fraud and election integrity issues, I only speak to things that I can actually identify. I don't talk about perceptions or hyperbole or assumptions or accusations. I only bring up factual evidence, and I've done it many times in this committee on the floor of the Senate. So if that counts as a viable explanation with regard to the 2020 election, I would hope it would. Again, I don't mean to go on and on about this issue other than to say that this is a very small ask. It's a legitimate one. And again, it's not even coming from me or from my colleagues on the Republican side of this committee. It's coming from your voters back in home. 90% of people in Connecticut want photo ID for voting. An overwhelming number of our constituents.
Thank you. Is there further comment on the amendment? Seeing none, I will just make a couple comments myself. I appreciate all the remarks that have been made by all the members so far, and hearing them. I think there are a couple issues with this amendment that should be addressed. One is that, as is being acknowledged by the proponent, it covers issues related far beyond early voting to all sorts of voting. And as a result, I think that it is not an issue that is best addressed through an amendment onto a bill proposing to implement early voting. Additionally, if we're going to have a bill that, or an amendment that addresses these issues, I think we would want to get specific testimony from the Secretary of State on how this process would evolve and what costs it would incur more generally. I also wanted to address the points that were made with regard to access. I appreciate that the proponents have included in this bill that individuals who cannot afford to get a photo ID may have the fee waived for them. But that doesn't account for other aspects of the cost on those individuals. And currently, those are in general the greatest costs, which are the ability to actually get access to the photo identification in the first place, whether it's by transportation, whether it's knowledge, whether it's the ability to move or move about through some sort of disability. And it's true that the number of people who cannot access photo ID currently is a smaller number than those who can, but it is a significant number in our state as it is in all states. And research has shown that that burden falls disproportionately on the people who already find themselves in reduced access, people who are poor or of color or have disabilities or illnesses and other issues. So with that, I urge my colleagues to reject this amendment. Madam Clerk, when you're prepared, please call the roll.
Master Francesco, Amendment 1. Flexer,
Senator Flexer votes no.
Blumenthal,
Blumenthal votes no.
Slap,
Senator Slapp votes no.
Morinbello,
Rep. Morinbello votes no.
Sampson,
Sampson is yes.
Master Francesco,
Master Francesco votes yes.
Burger Gervalo,
Burger Gervalo votes no.
Bronco,
Bronco votes yes.
Carpino,
Representative Carpino votes yes.
Haddad,
Haddad votes no.
Hoxa,
Hoxa votes yes.
Kana,
Kana votes no.
Labriola,
Representative Labriola votes yes.
Marks,
Senator Marks votes no.
McCarthy Vehy,
Representative McCarthy Vehy votes no.
McCrory, Parker, Rosario,
Representative Rosario votes no.
Santiago,
Santiago votes yes. I mean, I'm sorry, no.
All set, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. If you could announce the roll.
6 yay, 11 nay, 2 absent.
The amendment fails. Representative Sampson, you're recognized.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. I have another amendment I'd like to offer on Senate Bill 1057. This one addresses some of the concerns that I brought up when I was going line by line through the bill itself. One thing that we are doing in the process of expanding the timeframe for voting to include early voting, 10 days, 14 days, what have you, is we are also expanding the provision for election day registration. And one of the concerns that I've had since we enacted election day registration years ago was the fact that there's no follow-up in the state of Connecticut. Just another instance where other states that have similar, very open access policies also bother to do the other half of the equation, and that is include the protection that goes with that access. We don't have any protections associated with election day registration. In fact, we do not even keep track of the number of people that use election day registration. We do not keep track of the number of people that once they are registered by the town and the verification is mailed to them, how many people are received that verification, how many of those are returned, which should pose a very serious question to anyone about, how someone was able to indicate an identity and an address to vote on election day, but then shortly thereafter, their mail is returned using that same information. We keep no information and no record keeping and no audits of that information. And to me, that's a failure. If you're going to institute a policy like election day registration, you should be tracking it to make sure that it's beneficial. And I'll repeat something I just said, which is that everything that we do to increase the access to elections has to be coupled with the idea that it's our job also to make sure that we are not tampering with the accuracy of that election, because everyone who votes, their rights are at stake. Because if we're allowing votes to be counted that are not legitimate, then what is the value of other individuals' votes? To me, that's the way I've always looked at this. And that's the reason why I think that many of these policies, photo ID, audits on election day registration I think are valuable. And they restore trust where trust is lacking. So, Mr. Chairman, this is a rather lengthy amendment, but I do believe it's been distributed by the clerk. And I can just briefly describe it to say that this would create an audit system for early voting. Effectively, what it does is it requires the registrars back in each of our towns to track the number of election day voters there are, election day registered voters rather, and how many are subsequently placed on the inactive registry as a result of the notice being returned, undelivered, et cetera. And it will also require that reporting to go to the Secretary of State, and that Secretary of State would compile those reports and send them back to us so that we would have this information for policymaking purposes. I move adoption. I think this is a smart amendment. I don't see how anyone could object to knowing whether our policy system is actually working. And I'd like a roll call vote. Thank you.
The amendment is moved by Senator Sampson, seconded by Representative Master Francesco. And when the vote is taken, it will be taken by roll. Is there further comment on this amendment? Seeing none, I will say that while some audit may be well taken, and in fact, I believe we are looking at legislation to do so this session, this is not the place to include that language in a bill about early voting. And that we should separately consider any such legislation. And not having had a chance to review in detail how that audit would be conducted, and without the testimony of the Secretary of the State's office on it, I believe we're not prepared to add it to legislation at this point. So with that, I would urge my colleagues to reject the amendment. And I see Senator Flexer. Nope, never mind. She was just preparing to vote. And with that, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Sampson Amendment 2. Flexer,
Senator Flexer votes no.
Blumenthal,
Blumenthal votes no.
Slap,
Senator Slapp votes no.
Morinbello,
Rep. Morinbello votes no.
Sampson,
Sampson votes yes.
Master Francesco,
Master Francesco votes yes.
Burger Gervalo,
Burger Gervalo votes no.
Bronco,
Bronco votes yes.
Carpino,
Representative Carpino votes yes.
Haddad,
Haddad votes no.
Hoxa,
Hoxa votes yes.
Kana,
Kana votes no.
Labriola,
Representative Labriola votes yes.
Marks,
Senator Marks votes no.
McCarthy Vehy,
Representative McCarthy Vehy votes no.
McCrory, Parker, Rosario,
Rosario votes no.
I need your camera on, Representative, please.
Can you see me now?
I cannot.
Rosario votes no.
I still cannot see you, Representative.
Hello? Rosario votes no.
I cannot see you. I can come back to you after in a minute, but I cannot see you.
Okay, I can see you. I can see the committee. All right, try me back again.
Okay. Santiago,
Santiago votes no.
Representative Rosario, you want to try one more time? There you go. Okay.
Rosario votes no.
Thank you. All set, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Would you please announce the roll?
6 yay, 11 nay, 2 absent.
Thank you. The amendment fails. Senator Sampson, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, disappointed that that amendment also failed. I said jokingly back here that we're dispelling the myth that we're working on this legislation in a bipartisan way anyway. And I'm sad that that seems to be more truth than just humor. And for people at home, I mean, we do work together on a great number of things. It just I'm disappointed that this isn't one of them. And I completely understand the passion that comes from people on both sides of the aisle. I know that during our amendment conversation, things got a little feisty. But that's good. And I certainly respect my colleagues who have different views. As long as people come to the table with honesty and passion, and I certainly respect a difference of opinion. I do have a number of other amendments before me, but I'm not going to call them today. I think there's not a lot of purpose today to continue to do that. My goal was really to provide a little preview to some of the things that I think are important if there was a desire to engage the minority in a fruitful conversation to come up with a bill that we can truly say is something developed by the Connecticut legislature, inclusive of Democrats and Republicans. And I'm going to remain hopeful that that happens. I've got great confidence in both the chairs of this committee that they're good people, and they see my perspective on some occasions anyway. I wish it was on more occasions. And I will reiterate that, you know, if we could just adopt a couple of these provisions, it might go a very long way to getting us to some bipartisan agreement. I think narrowing the time frame of early voting and incorporating at least some of the protections that we've discussed here today could turn this into a unanimous vote down the road. And I'd much prefer to see that, Mr. Chairman. But with that, I will relinquish the microphone.
Thank you, Senator Sampson, for your remarks. Are there any further comment on this bill? With that, I would just make a few closing remarks. And I appreciate the conversation we've had today. A number of the questions that have been asked have allowed us to examine the bill and will allow us to help clarify the bill. And as the bill moves out of committee, or as these bills move out of committee, we look forward to continuing the discussion about how to iron out all these details and make sure all the gaps are filled. Additionally, there have been concerns raised about the duplicativeness of our system. And I would agree with some of those concerns. But in some ways, that's the result of the hand we've been dealt. Our Constitution was very restrictive, or it still is very restrictive on these issues. And as a result, we've had to address these issues in a piecemeal fashion. And hopefully, once we've resolved the issues with our Constitution, with our statutes, the early voting, election day voting, and no excuse absentee balloting processes will all work in sync. And finally, with regard to the bills, we wanted to make sure that we had multiple bills and at least one going to the House and the Senate, not only because we wanted to give people options for the public hearing, but also because we wanted that to ensure that they both hit each House at the same time, so that each House will have a chance to address them individually. We know that can take some time. And we also know from the Secretary of State's testimony that because of the compressed timeline of now until Election Day 2023, we need to pass these bills relatively soon in order for the Secretary and all of the other officials to be ready. So with that, I urge my colleagues to support this bill, which I believe, and I think others believe, certainly the voters believe, insofar as they approved the constitutional amendment, will expand access to the franchise in the state of Connecticut. And seeing no further comment, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Senate Bill 1057 JFS to the floor. Flexer.
Senator Flexer votes yes.
Blumenthal.
Blumenthal votes yes.
Slack.
Senator Slapp votes yes.
Morinbello.
Representative Morinbello votes yes.
Sampson.
Senator Sampson votes no.
Master Francesco.
Master Francesco votes no.
Burger Gervalo.
Burger Gervalo votes yes.
Bronco.
Bronco votes no.
Carpino.
Carpino votes yes.
Haddad.
Haddad votes yes.
Hoxa.
Hoxa votes no.
Khanna.
Khanna votes yes.
Labriola,
Representative Labriola votes no.
Marks,
Senator Marks votes yes.
McCarthy Vehi,
Representative McCarthy Vehi votes yes.
McCrory, Parker, Rosario,
Rosario votes yes.
Santiago,
Santiago votes yes.
all set, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and votes will be held open at least until the end of the meeting. We'll determine at the end of the meeting whether they need to be held open for an additional time and what that time shall be. With that, one moment, I just need to find my agenda. It's buried under a mountain of paper. Thank you. Let me just make sure I get. Need the LCO numbers. Good. Thank you. All right. Next up, we have item number 4 on our agenda, Senate Bill 1064, an act concerning the implementation of early voting. This will be a JF to the floor. The LCO number is, excuse me, withdrawn. This will be a JFS to the floor. The LCO number is 6082. I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Senator Flexer, seconded by Representative Haddad. This bill is identical to the early voting bill we just did, except that it adds 4 days to the period of early voting. So it will be 14 days of early voting instead of 10. And it also includes not only 4 days of early voting for special elections, but also 4 days of early voting for referenda. Are there additional comments on this bill? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Senate Bill 1064 JFS to the floor. Flexer,
Senator Flexer votes yes.
Blumenthal,
Blumenthal votes yes.
Slap,
Senator Slap votes yes.
Morinbello,
Rep. Morinbello votes yes.
Sampson,
Sampson is no.
Master Francesco,
Master Francesco votes no.
Burger Gervalo,
Burger Gervalo votes yes.
Bronco,
Bronco votes no.
Carpino,
Representative Carpino votes no.
Haddad,
Haddad votes yes.
Hoxa,
Hoxa votes no.
Khanna,
Khanna votes yes.
Labriola,
Representative Labriola votes no.
Marks,
Senator Marks votes yes.
McCarthy Vehi,
Representative McCarthy Vehi votes yes.
McCrory, Parker, Rosario,
Representative Rosario votes yes.
Santiago,
Santiago votes yes.
all set, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And votes will be held open until at least the end of the meeting, as I indicated previously. Next up is item number 5 on our agenda, HB 5004, an act implementing early voting. That will be a JFS to the floor. The LCO number is 6091. I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Senator Flexer, seconded by Representative Haddad. This bill is identical to Senate Bill 1064, which we just voted on. Is there any comment on this bill? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
House Bill 5004 JFS to the floor. Flexer,
Senator Flexer votes yes.
Blumenthal,
Blumenthal votes yes.
Slap,
Senator Slot votes yes.
Moran Bello,
Rep. Bello votes yes.
Sampson,
Sampson votes no.
Master Francesco,
Master Francesco votes no.
Burger Gervalo,
Burger Gervalo votes yes.
Bronco,
Bronco votes no.
Corpino,
Carpino votes no.
Haddad,
Haddad votes yes.
Hoxa,
Hoxa votes no.
Khanna,
Khanna votes yes.
Labriola,
Representative Labriola votes no.
Marks,
Marks votes yes.
I did not see you, Senator. One more time, please.
Hi. Senator Marks votes yes.
Thank you. McCarthy Vehi,
Representative McCarthy Vahey votes yes.
McCrory, Parker, Rosario,
Rosario votes yes.
Santiago,
Santiago votes yes.
all set, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We will recess briefly while we determine how much additional time we will keep open the votes.
Representative Carpino, would you like to vote on a few of the bills that you missed?
Yes, please.
Do you have an agenda in front of you, Representative?
I do.
Okay, perfect. House Bill 6826.
Number 12 on the agenda, correct, ma'am?
Uh,
False claims.
68. Yes, correct.
Representative Carpino would like to vote yes.
House Joint Resolution 10.
Yes. Representative Carpino would like to vote yes.
House Bill 6871.
Representative Carpino would like to vote yes.
And House Bill 6872.
No.
You are all set, Representative.
Thank you.
Representative Rosario. I will, House Bill 6872.
Let me pull up my agenda.
I'm sorry?
I'm just pulling up my agenda.
Oh, okay.
I'm a yes on that.
House Bill 6871.
Yes.
House Bill 6868.
Yes.
Senate Joint Resolution 35.
Yes.
House Joint Resolution 10.
The Taiwan sisters,
Correct.
yeah, I mean, yes.
House Bill 6826.
Yes.
House Bill 5720.
Yes.
Okay, you are all set, Representative.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Madam Clerk?
He said 5 minutes ago he was getting on, but I don't know. I don't want to bug him too much.
I think he's here.
Yes, we're
Hey,
just,
y'all, are you waiting for me? I am so sorry about that. Sorry, I got on in the middle of Represario and I thought that it was, I'm totally ready. I'm just in the corner of the room.
Rep. Parker, you can go before us. I'm happy to speak to Senator Slapp in this case.
Representative Parker,
Yes,
do you have an agenda available?
I do. You know what? I'm gonna go in the hallway. Sorry, I'll let Kristen go first or whoever else. I'm sorry, everybody. Thank you for being patient with me. I'll be right back. Please go ahead. Rep. McCarthy Vahey or Senator Slapp.
Yeah, okay.
All right, thank you. Apologies that I'm appearing through Valentina's computer, but I just clicked out of the Zoom. Votes will be held open until 6:30 p.m.
Representative Parker?
I believe he needed to step out, so either Senator Slapp, you can go ahead.
Go ahead. You got it. You were there first. Go ahead.
Okay. Representative McCarthy Vahey. Let me just. I apologize. They're out of order because I was trying to find the ones that were missing for the legislators before you. Okay, let me just see what you meant. House Bill 5720.
I'm sorry,
5720.
Representative McCarthy Vahey votes yes.
House Bill 6826.
Representative McCarthy Leahy votes yes.
House Joint Resolution 10.
Representative McCarthy Leahy votes yes.
Senate Joint Resolution 29.
Representative McCarthy Leahy votes yes.
House Joint Resolution 1.
Representative McCarthy Leahy votes yes.
Senate Joint Resolution 35.
Representative McCarthy Leahy votes yes.
Senate Bill 390.
Representative McCarthy Leahy votes yes.
House Bill 6868.
Representative McCarthy Leahy votes yes.
House Bill 6871.
Representative McCarthy Leahy votes yes.
House Bill 6872.
Representative McCarthy Leahy votes yes.
Okay, Representative, you are all set. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Representative Parker, just checking to see if you might be back.
Madam Clerk, I think you should go ahead with Senator Slack.
Okay. Thank you. Senator Slapp.
Yeah, and if Representative Parker wants to jump in at any point, he takes precedent. So jump in when you can with him. But until then, though, I think I only missed a few. So. Oh, I think he might be ready. His hand's up. Is the new dad ready to go?
He might have stepped away. I'm just you did miss a few senators, so we'll just do that.
Okay.
House Joint Resolution 10.
Senator Slapp votes yes.
Senate Joint Resolution 29.
Senator Slapp votes yes.
House Joint Resolution 1.
Senator Slapp votes yes.
Senate Joint Resolution 35.
Senator Slapp votes yes.
Senate Bill 390.
Senator Slapp votes yes.
House Bill 6868.
Senator Slapp votes yes.
House Bill 6871.
Senator Slapp votes yes.
House Bill 6872.
Senator Slapp votes yes.
You are all set, Senator.
Thanks so much. Have a
Thank
good night.
you.
Thank
You
you. See y'all.
Representative Parker, if you are there, please let me know. Your hand is raised, so I will lower it and you can just raise it again when you come.
Hey, Valentina, thank you so much for waiting. I think I'm ready.
Hi, Representative.
Thank you for being so accommodating. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's no problem at all. So I'm just gonna call these bills out of order. I don't know if you do have access to an agenda.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. House Bill 5004.
Representative Parker votes yes.
Senate Bill 1064,
Yes.
Senate Bill 1057,
Yes.
House Bill 5720,
Yes.
House Bill 6826,
Yes.
House Joint Resolution 10,
Yes.
Senate Joint Resolution 29,
Yes.
House Joint Resolution 1,
Yes.
Senate Joint Resolution 35,
Yes.
Senate Bill 390,
Yes.
House Bill 6868,
Yes.
House Bill 6871,
Yes.
House Bill 6872.
Yes.
And you are all set.
Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone that helped make this work for me. I really appreciate you being accommodating. See you soon.
Bye, Representative.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, Senator. Do you have access to an agenda? You are muted.
I couldn't hear you.
Do you have access to an agenda?
No. Can you just, I want to vote yes for all the votes.
Okay, I'll just call the bill number individually, and you can just, okay. House Bill 5004.
Yes.
Senate Bill 1064.
Yes.
Senate Bill 1057.
Yes.
House Bill 5720.
Yes.
House Bill 6826.
Yes.
House Joint Resolution 10.
Yes.
Senate Joint Resolution 29.
Yes.
House Joint Resolution 1.
Yes.
Senate Joint Resolution 35. Senate Bill 390. House Bill 6868.
Yes.
House Bill 6871.
Yes.
House Bill 6872.
Yes.
Okay, you are all set, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you.